You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Military leaders sounding alarm about dangers Trump poses for U.S. allies, based on an article by Alex Henderson. NATO was never just a personality test. The source says what it says. The reporting is about Trump openly souring on NATO at the Ankara summit, European alarm, and Jon Sopel's argument that Europe can no longer assume the US will defend it. That is a surface story. The deeper story is who actually had power, who used it, and how long the alliance has depended on denial. Trump is not the whole problem. Trump made the immediate decision to treat NATO as a nuisance and to act as if the alliance exists to validate his moves. The source says he called NATO a paper tiger, attacked Iran without consulting allies, and snarled about Article 5 only when other countries did not instantly line up behind his war. That is not confusion. That is deliberate contempt for an institution he is supposed to lead. But the article still risks over-personalizing the damage. Trump is the most blatant vehicle for this rupture, not its only cause. A presidency that can casually threaten withdrawal, ignore consultation, and redefine alliance obligations on the fly is a presidency that already holds too much unchecked institutional power. Europe helped build its own vulnerability. Sopel's warning that Europe is on our own lands because it names a rebel dependency. European governments benefited from the US securities umbrella while treating American protection as a permanent feature of the world. The source notes that even Barack Obama pressured European allies to spend more, which is true enough, but that contrast can become a comforting myth if it is used to pretend the alliance was ever equal. It was not equal. Europe outsourced risk. The US collected leverage. That bargain was always unstable, and Trump is simply stripping away the polite language that used to hide it. The misdirection is the point. The weak frame here is the suggestion that this is mainly about whether Trump understands NATO. Understanding was never the bottleneck. Power was. Trump understands coercion perfectly well. He sees an alliance, a rule or promise as rebel only when it can be used to extract obedience. The article is strongest when it describes the practical consequence. Allies cannot plan around the US president who thinks collective defense is optional. It is weakest when it treats the crisis like a tragic misunderstanding between decent institutions and one aberrant man. There is nothing accidental about a system that gives a hostile president access to alliance-level consequences. The pattern is bigger than NATO. What this story reveals is not merely transatlantic strain. It is the collapse of the old assumption that US power is inherently stabilizing if wrapped in enough ceremony. The NATO summit exposes a more brutal fact. Alliances built around American dominance are vulnerable whenever the occupant of the Oval Office decides that loyalty matters more than law, consultation, or precedent. That is the larger political pattern. Institutions do not fail only when enemies attack them from outside. They fail when powerful actors inside them convert obligation into leverage, and when allies mistake habit for safety. NATO is now paying for years of managed dependency. Trump is just the most shameless person ever handed the bill. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Alternet for today's article. With the automated voice of Arctic, thanks for listening.